Hey math enthusiast, I'm here to continue the notes from section 7.1, which deals with ratios and proportions. What you need to know about proportions is that it is essentially when you take two ratios and set them equal to one another. Typically, my proportion is written out like this, where the ratios appear as though they are fractions. Now, the best way to solve this is using cross multiplication. So if I'm presented with a over b equals c over d, I would cross multiply. So a times d equals b times c to allow me to solve. So let's see if we can apply that method to these first couple examples. So for O, cross multiply, so I'm going to have 2x on the one side, and it's going to be equal to 4 times 7, which is going to give me 28 on the other side. So in this case, it looks like x equals 14. Now for the next problem, P, it might help to write out each step, because I'm going to have to do 4 times this quantity, x minus 3. Now on the other side, I'm just going to have 1 times 3x, which is clearly just going to give me 3x. Now, remember, when I move on to my next step, you have to distribute this 4 to both terms in this binomial. So it's going to be 4x minus 12 equals 3x. Now, at this point, we can get all our x's on one side. I'm going to move the 4x over to the right, which is actually going to give me negative 1x, which equals negative 12. And lastly, I just want to make that positive because I want to know what positive x equals. So I'm going to divide by negative 1. So clearly at this point, x equals 12. Now, if for some reason you're guessing your work, you're not sure if you did it correctly, take that x value and plug it back into your proportion. So it would be 1 over 12 minus 3 equals 4 over 3 times 12. So it looks like I end up with 1 over 9, which equals 4 over 36. I can't reduce the 1 over 9, but I can reduce the 4 over 36 to 1 over 9. So it looks like my proportion is equal. So for this next example, start off the same way. I would write it all out first. So you're going to have x times 6x plus 4. And on the other side, you're going to have 4x times 25. I know these two are going to be equal to one another. So once again, I need to distribute. Remember that x times x is going to give me 6x squared, and then obviously x times 4 is just going to give me 4x. On the right hand side, I'm not really distributing as much as just multiplying. I end up with 100x. Let's get rid of this 4x, get all my single x's, or x to the first, on one side, which is going to give me 96x equals 6x squared. Now, even though there is an x squared term right here, I do not have to factor because there's no constant. There's no single term without an x. So now what I'm going to do is I want to get rid of this 6, and I want to get rid of one of these x's. So my 6's will cancel, and then this is going to turn into x to the first. Do the same thing over here, divide by 6x. Well, since these cancel, that just leaves me with x on the left-hand side, and then my x's cancel here. 96 divided by 6 leaves me with 16. For the next problem, once again, write it all out. It's going to make it a lot easier. So I'm going to do 32 times 7x plus 3. It's definitely going to give me some large numbers. On the other side, I'm going to have 19 on the outside times 15x minus 11. So once I go through and distribute on the left-hand side, I'm going to end up with 224x plus 96. Once I go through and distribute on the right-hand side, we end up with 285x minus 209. First thing I'm going to do to solve my equation, let's get all our x's on one side. So I'm going to subtract that 224x. That's going to leave me with 61x. Also, while I'm at it, I'm going to get rid of this 209 and get all my constants on the same side. So on the left-hand side now, I'm going to be left with 305. So my last step is to just get rid of the 61 to get x all by itself. So it looks like x should equal 5. For this next problem, they start me off with this ratio, RS to RT is equal to 13 to 25. First thing I'm going to do is actually rewrite it in another form. So we have RS to RT. And they're telling me it's equal to 13 over 25. Well, if I go over to my picture on the left, it looks like RS is actually 104. So I'm actually going to replace this with 104. In addition to that, it looks like we also have RT down here, which is 18z minus 16. So once again, I'm going to replace RT with 18z minus 16. Now my proportion's set up. It's just like the problems that we did previously. All right, I would like you guys to pause the video, try to solve it on your own, and I'll reveal the answer in a couple seconds. Looks like we end up with z equals 12. As I said before, if you want to, you can go through and check your work. So I could take that 12 and plug it in here, which is actually going to give me 200. So then if I were to compare the two side lengths, so remember we had RS compared to RT, which I now know is 200, that's going to reduce down to 13 over 25 if I divide both of them by 8. For the next example, we're starting the same way. All right, I would just start off by rewriting your ratio in that fraction form. So AB to AC is 15 to 8. All right, and let's go through and replace some pieces. So AB is the long side in my triangle. I'm going to fill in 60 there. And then AC down here is that 3D plus 2. Now that your proportion is set up, now we can go through cross multiply and solve. So we have 15 times 3D plus 2 equals 8 times 60, which is going to give me 480. Now when you distribute, it looks like we end up with 45D plus 30 equals 480. So the next thing I'm going to do is get this 30 over to the other side, which is going to leave me with 45D equals 450. So the last thing I'm going to do is divide by 45. So obviously in this case D is going to come out to be 10. Which means that this side down here, AC, is actually going to be 32. So for my final problem here, we're comparing the aspect ratio of a television screen. So that compares its width to its height. So the first thing they tell me is that my ratio is 16 to 9. So let's stop right here. There. Remember, this is comparing width to height. And they're telling me it's 16 to 9. Now they go on to tell me that my widescreen TV actually has a width of 26. So let's start off, let's rewrite this in that fraction form. So what I'm saying is that width to height is equal to 16 to 9. Well, now let's replace my width with what we have. All right, they told me that my width is 26, and I want to solve for that height. Now it's in that familiar proportion form that we've dealt with. I'm going to end up with 16h equals 234. And lastly, I just need to divide by 16. So in this case, if my width is 26, my height is going to be 14.625. And I'm dealing in inches.